come hang out with me while I do acupuncture on my forearm and talk about the Aubrey Marcus podcast fiasco debacle where he introduces polyamory as monogamy. Sorry, radical monogamy. Now, you might be wondering, why are you talking about this? It's not something like these kind of themes are not really something I've talked about on my channel, but I have talked about acupuncture early in my channel days. I've been sticking to writerly themes recently. Well, recently I've only been doing shorts. I haven't even posted a long form video for a long time, but I wanted to, I don't know, this has just been lingering in my head about everything that I've seen, I should say heard really, Aubrey say about feminine and masculine, and his perception of what divine masculinity is, or masculinity in general. And to be honest, I'm trained in a very unique technique in acupuncture called the 8 extraordinary channels, which works very specifically with the yin and the yang, divine feminine, divine masculine, and has like a very Tao approach to healing, like a very balanced perspective to healing the really what is now considered the subconscious mind. Obviously, traditionally, they didn't call it the subconscious mind because those kind of terms didn't exist thousands of years ago when all this was developed. But now there's like this fascinating parallel between the 8 extraordinary channels and Yang psychology and the yin and the yang. But anyways, that's like my very long rambling intro to why I have some thoughts about Aubrey podcast situation. So when it comes to the concept of masculine, the divine masculine or masculinity, we have some very kind of dysfunctional perspectives of it, like this very caveman perspective of what masculinity is, caveman out there protecting and hunting for food, and that's it, while the feminine stays home and tends to the children. And that is a part of it, sure, but like a very rudimentary part of it, because in this philosophy of the 8 extras, let me kind of paint a picture of how it works. So the mother channel, the divine feminine, it's called Ren, and it runs right down the center of the body. And so the idea is, if you think about like when you're in jeopardy or when you're in danger, first thing you do is you duck and you kind of close your arms over your face in your midsection where all your organs are, because ultimately there's this like element of like, this is vulnerable, this needs protection, and there's this element of the divine feminine as the the person that makes the child feel very protected. And if obviously like when a baby is a baby still or a toddler, and there's they fall, they start walking, they fall, they need their boo-boos to be kissed and hugged, first thing they do is they run to mama so mom can hug them and make them feel safe and loved and nourished and protected. And obviously a woman also nourishes her baby with her own body. So there's this element of feeling safe with mother, feeling loved, feeling nurtured, feeling actually fed and psychologically nourished. So that's the feminine aspect within this philosophy. Now the masculine runs up and down the back, so it runs right along the spine. And the interesting polarity with that is the Ren channel, where the Ran channel, the mother channel, makes a child feel safe, the father channel makes a child like stand up straight and be able to stand in the world and stand up for your his or her beliefs, and feel courageous enough to go attain whatever goals they want to accomplish, go out in the world, find curiosity. Like that kind of element of support is the father channel, or the divine masculine. And if you kind of want a visual, if you kind of like that typical picturesque scene where dad is teaching his child to ride a bicycle, and that moment where a child is going independent and the dad lets the child go and goes, "You can do it, go, go, go." So there's this element of like world's best cheerleader for your individuation. So see how different that is, it goes from this basic understanding of like men protect, female and children from other predators. There's an element to that, of course, because also I'll later get into it, but the masculine is associated with the warrior archetype. So yes, there is that, but that's just like a tiny little sliver of what the yang actually does. The yang is very, very supportive to children as well, in just a very different way. Whereas the mother makes a child feel safe, nourished, and loved, the yang, or the father channel divine masculine, makes the child feel supported in the sense that you are strong enough, courageous enough to individuate, to become your own individual, to go forth and prosper and accomplish whatever you want to accomplish. And I'm coming at this podcast from this perspective, and all I'm hearing Aubrey say is like the masculine is like this, the ketamine has like a very masculine feeling. And I guess I watched another podcast where he talks about masculinity and how like it penetrates, it's a penetrative power, and it's like everything is boiled down to sex, I guess. And it's just again so superficial, and that's surprising for somebody who's like who sells himself as a very spiritual person. I don't know how none of his other gurus ever really got into the meaning of divine masculinity, and never broached the topic of yang, which is at this point I know it's Eastern in nature, but Carl Jung talks about the yin and the yang in his writings. So it's permeated, talk about penetration. It permeated Western thought as well. So it's pretty universal. And it's just kind of weird that he doesn't know this. Anywho, I am just like reeling from that alone, how somebody with so many followers and so many experiences with gurus and psychedelics doesn't seem to understand the basic principles of the yin and the yang. And that's not even considering just my own kind of perspective from studying other philosophies, why what he's doing is pretty toxic. Because in reality, there's a lot of elements that I disagree with in the podcast. I think a lot of people are trying to be very like love and light, and so they don't go into like, they say things like, "Oh, I'm not here to judge Aubrey," and I understand why they say that, because they don't, they truly don't want to, judge not lest ye be judged, kind of practice that, and that's like a really powerful philosophy to take on, but you still have to have discernment. And of course, the discernment here is that, sure, he has freedom and individuality to do whatever he wants, but his wife, the woman that he supposedly loves, is so uncomfortable by this whole dynamic. She's crying, she's in tears in the original podcast, and he's literally just coldly going, "Well, if you want to leave, you're free to leave, and I'll just give you money." What? Like, how is that supportive? How is that loving? And this doesn't even get into the whole history, because another element to me is, I love history. I studied history in my undergrad program before I studied acupuncture. So I love history, and I love studying like religious practices within history. And one of the things that is so fascinating to me, like, is this weird repetitive kind of thing that you see in history, where men get told by the divine powers that be that they need to take on different wives. And he literally calls Alana a sister to Valana. Hello, sister wives, anybody? Like a Mormon concept? This whole thing has very strong Joseph Smith energy. Anyways, I have a lot to say about this, but I'd be rambling. So let me know if you want to know anything else.